Kael released my hand at the altar before the whole pack could look away. For one suspended second, I still felt the warmth of his palm against mine, the ghost of a promise everyone had expected him to keep. Then his fingers were gone. The ceremonial bond ribbon slid from my wrist and landed in the ash at our feet. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the murmurs began. Munfang's great hall had always smelled like pine smoke, old fur, and iron. Tonight it smelled like humiliation. Every torch along the stone walls threw light over faces I had known since childhood, and every face seemed sharpened by it. Pity from some, satisfaction from others, hunger from the cruelest ones, because shame was a feast in a pack that worshipped strength. Kael stood tall on the raised altar, broad shoulders rigid beneath his black ceremonial coat. He did not look at me. That was the deepest cut of all. Not anger, not regret, just refusal. The bond rejects weakness, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber with the cold certainty of a judgment already made. I will not take a mate who cannot stand beside an alpha. The words struck harder than a blow. A few wolves in the crowd lowered their eyes. Most did not. They watched me the way people watched an animal limping in a trap, curious to see whether it would bite or beg. I did neither. My throat burned, but I bent slowly, picked up the fallen ribbon, and closed my hand around it until the woven silver edges bit into my palm. If I cried here, they would remember that instead of my name. An elder stepped forward, uneasy. Kael, the rite was announced. The pack needs a Luna with power, Kael cut in. At last he looked at me, and somehow that was worse. His gaze held no tenderness, only distance, as if he had already placed me among things discarded. Elara Whitmore does not have it. A bitter laugh came from the right side of the hall. Mara, one of the unmated she-wolves, folded her arms and leaned toward the women beside her. She never did. The sound spread, soft snickers, whispers behind lifted hands, the scrape of boots on stone. My skin felt too tight for my body. I had known cruelty in pieces. A slight. A rumor. A room gone quiet when I entered it. But public rejection had a different shape. It stripped a person down to bone. I should have walked out then. Instead, I heard a sharp yelp. The sound came from near the entrance, small and panicked, almost buried under the crowd's murmuring. Heads turned. One of the kitchen boys had dropped a tray, and in the confusion, a young wolf pup, no more than 6, still half in shift with trembling ears and human hands, had stumbled backward into the ceremonial fire basin. Gasps cracked through the hall. The basin was shallow but wide, filled with blue ritual flame and smoking resin. Fire licked up the pup's sleeve as he screamed. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Kael turned, but too late, too shocked, too far. I was already moving. I ran through the circle of wolves, shoved past a pair of stunned warriors, and dropped to my knees at the basin. Heat slammed into my face. The pup flailed, blinded by fear, his burning sleeve tangling around his arm as he tried to crawl out, and slipped on the stone lip. Look at me, I said, grabbing his shoulder. Stop fighting. I've got you. The fabric scorched my hands the second I touched it. Pain shot through my palms, raw and vicious, but I wrapped the flaming cloth around my own forearm to smother it, and pulled the pup hard against my chest. He was light, shaking so badly I could feel each spasm through my ribs. Someone shouted for water. Someone else just shouted. I planted one foot, then the other, and hauled us both backward over the basin's rim. We hit the floor hard. My elbow cracked against stone. Stone slammed the breath out of me. For one stunned second, all I could hear was the hiss of dying fire and the hard, frightened panting pressed against my chest. My burned forearm throbbed, so violently it made my fingers shake, but I did not loosen my hold on the pup. His small body was still trembling, heat pulsing beneath singed silver fur, as if something far larger than a wolf heartbeat had been trapped inside him and was fighting to break free. Around the ceremonial basin, the hall had gone sharp with shock. The Moonfang pack had been laughing a moment ago. I had heard it while the flames climbed, while no one moved. While Kael Rowan stood above the rite, he had turned into a humiliation and watched me step where no one had asked me to stand. Now the laughter was gone. In its place came the brittle silence people wore when they realized a scene had slipped out of their control. Then the voices hit all at once. Don't touch it. She crossed the fire line. That creature came from the King's Road. Look at her arm. Look at the basin. I pushed myself upright with my good hand. teeth clenched so tightly my jaw ached. Water from the overturned basin ran cold beneath my knees, carrying black ash across the pale stone. The scorched cloth was still wrapped around my forearm. I could smell my own skin beneath it. I swallowed hard and kept my face still. The pup gave a weak, strained sound. Not a bark. Not a whine. Something lower. Older. That sound moved through the hall faster than any command. The nearest wolf stepped back. Kael Rowan came down from the raised platform at last. His boots stopped a few feet away, close enough for me to catch the cedar and iron scent that had once made my chest tighten with hope, and now only reminded me how cleanly hope could be cut. The whole rite had been meant to end one thing in public. My place. My bond to the pack. My worth. He had done it with the cold discipline of an alpha protecting order, and maybe that was what made it sting worse. Cruelty was easier to hate when it looked cruel. Elara Whitmore, he said, voice flat enough to carry. Put the animal down. Animal. I looked up at him through the smoke. It would have burned alive. A muscle shifted in his jaw. You broke a sacred boundary in front of the entire Moonfang pack. And you left it there. The words slipped out before caution could stop them. A few wolves drew breath. No one spoke. Kael Rowan's gaze dropped to the pup in my arms. For the first time, uncertainty flickered there. That is not one of ours. I knew that. Everyone knew it now. A wolf pup did not survive ringed in dragon fire, not unless something impossible had already touched it. Even soaked in smoke and cinders, he carried a scent that did not belong to the pine-dark bloodlines of Moonfang. It was stranger than that. Warmer, metallic and bright beneath the ash, like rain striking hot stone. The pup stirred. My whole body locked around him instinctively as heat flashed under his fur. Not flame this time. Something deeper, harsher, a pulse that ran through my ribs and into the floor. Cracks laced across the blackened edge of the basin. A woman in the front rank gasped. One of the older wolves made a sign against bad omens. Kael Rowan stepped forward then, finally decisive. Move away from her. 2 pack enforcers obeyed at once, circling in. Not toward the basin. Toward me. The change was so quick it barely felt real. A minute ago, I had been an inconvenience. Now I was the center of a danger they did not understand, and fear made people choose the nearest target. My burned arm screamed when I tried to rise, but I rose anyway, gathering the pup closer against me. No, I said. One of the enforcers hesitated. The other did not. He reached for the animal. Fingers brushed the pups for a second before a crack of sound split the clearing. Not thunder. Not a rifle. Something older. White fire slashed across the wet dark and struck the ground between me and the enforcer so hard the earth jumped under my knees. Steam hissed up from the mud. The man stumbled back with a curse, his hand snatching away from the animal as if he had reached into a forge. For one stunned beat, nobody moved. The trees held their breath. Even the frightened panting against my chest seemed to stop. Then the scent hit me. Smoke. Winter air. Metal after lightning. Every instinct in my wolf went rigid. A man stood on the far side of the scorched trench, where the path narrowed between black pines. I had not heard him approach. That frightened me more than the burst of fire. He looked human at first glance. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark clothes cut too cleanly for the wild, rain catching on the sharp line of his jaw. But nothing about him felt human when I looked again. Power sat around him like a second body, cold and immense and impossible to ignore. The rogue wolves who had been stalking the edge of the clearing lowered themselves first. Not in surrender. In fear. One of the Moonfang enforcers swallowed hard. State your business. The stranger's gaze moved over all of us and stopped on me. It should not have felt like being touched. It did. My burned arm throbbed. Mud soaked through my skirt. Blood from the pup had dried tacky against my hands. Under that unreadable stare, I had never felt more exposed, or more sharply aware that I was still alive. My business, he said, voice low and even, is that you are about to make a costly mistake. He took one step forward. The rain around him seemed to recoil from heat I still could not see. I tightened my hold on the pup. Who are you? His eyes flicked to the animal, then back to me. Pale eyes. Not gray. Not blue. Something brighter, like frost over a blade. Someone who arrived before they killed what is mine. The words landed harder than the fire had. The enforcer nearest me bristled. That creature was found on Moonfang land. And she, the man said, looking directly at him now, is under my protection. A silence followed that was so complete I could hear water dripping from pine needles. He had not asked. He had not explained. He had simply changed the shape of the danger with a sentence. My pulse kicked hard enough to hurt. I never asked for that. At that, his mouth shifted very slightly, not quite a smile. No, you didn't. Something in his answer unsettled me more than if he had tried to soothe me. He sounded certain. Not kind. Not cruel. Certain. Movement flashed at the tree line. The road wolves made their choice. 3 of them lunged at once. Not for me, but for him, as if instinct told them the true threat had finally shown itself. I barely saw the strike. Heat roared through the clearing. A ring of white flames snapped outward in a clean, brutal arc, stopping inches from my boots while hurling the wolves backward into the mud. They yelped, smoking, alive but broken in courage. One staggered up and fled. The others followed. No one from Moonfang chased them. No one from the hunters hidden farther in the woods stepped out either, though I could feel eyes on us now. Iron Talon. Waiting. Measuring. The kind of men who killed what they feared and sold the bones after. The enforcer's bravado thinned. Your dragon. The stranger did not bother denying it. Rain slid off his hair as he came closer, and the air warmed with every step. Close enough now, I could see the controlled violence in him, the kind that did not need to shout. Dragon nobles had passed through border markets before. I had seen their arrogance from a distance, their gold, their guards, their open disdain for wolves. This was different. Heat touched my skin before trust did. Rain still fell behind us in a thin silver curtain, but the closer I came to Lucian Vale, the less the storm seemed to matter. The market noise had died somewhere at my back. Even the men who had circled me moments ago had gone silent. Fear did that. Not the loud kind. The older kind. The kind that remembered fire. He looked at me once, then at the blood on my sleeve. Can you walk? I hated that my answer had to be honest. Yes. Good. His gaze shifted to the enforcer who had recognized what he was. Tell no one what you saw tonight. The man swallowed so hard I heard it over the rain. Yes, my lord. My lord. The words followed me harder than the weather did. Lucian Vale led me out of the market without touching me, and somehow that restraint unsettled me more than force would have. A dragon king did not need to grab. The world moved when he expected it to. 2 of the ashen-crowned dragons emerged from the dark ridge above the border road, as if the mountain itself had shaped them from smoke and metal. They wore scaled armor black as cooled lava, and when they saw me, both slowed. A wolf among dragons. I saw the judgment instantly. No one said it out loud. They did not need to. We climbed before dawn. The path cut through volcanic stone, sharp under my boots, with steam rising in pale ribbons from cracks in the earth. The air smelled of sulfur, wet ash, and something ancient enough to make my wolf restless under my skin. Behind us, the borderlands faded into mist. Ahead, Lucian's stronghold rose from the mountain like it had been carved by fire and command alone. I had expected a fortress. What waited above was a kingdom. Black towers pierced the clouds. Bridges arched over chasms full of red light. Water rushed through stone channels, hissing where it crossed heat vents. Dragon banners moved in the wind, dark crimson threaded with gold. Everywhere I looked, ash and splendor lived side by side. And everywhere I looked, eyes turned toward me. By the time we crossed the outer gate, I had counted more than a dozen members of the ashen-crowned dragons in the main court alone. 18 in all, I would later learn, made up Lucian Vale's royal circle and sworn attendants. That knowledge did not comfort me. It only told me exactly how outnumbered I was. A woman in bronze robes blocked my path beneath a vaulted hall of obsidian pillars. Her expression was cool, elegant, openly displeased. You brought a Moonfang wolf here, she said to Lucian Vale, not me. Her tone hit harder than if she had spat. Lucian did not break stride. I did. She carries pack scent. I noticed. And you mean to keep her inside the court of ashen scales? That finally made him stop. He turned with such frightening calm that even I felt it in my throat. Do you question my judgment? The woman bowed at once, but not before I caught the flash in her eyes. Not fear alone. Resentment. No, my king. My king again. No one had ever said those words near me with reverence. Near Kael Rowan, yes. Near the one who had rejected me before his pack, yes. I remembered that humiliation with a clarity that still burned. But this was different. This court did not know me well enough to hate me personally. Their distrust was colder than that. Cleaner. I was not an insult to one man here. I was an offense to an entire bloodline. Lucian led me deeper into the stronghold, through halls lit by fire basins and walls carved with spirals, wings, and old crowns. I kept my chin up because I had nothing else left to hold. My pride was bruised, my body exhausted, and my future had narrowed to the space directly in front of me. The first thing I noticed was the scent. Not smoke. Not iron. Not the old stone heat of Lucian Vale's mountain. Wolf. Familiar enough to make my pulse stumble, sharp enough to drag old instinct out of my bones before my mind could protect me from it. I stopped in the middle of the corridor. The fire basins along the walls hissed softly, throwing gold over black stone and carved dragon wings. 2 guards from the Ashen Crown Dragons turned at the same time, their expressions hardening as they watched my body go still. I barely saw them. My chest had already tightened around a truth I did not want. Kael Rowan was here. I had not heard a horn. No servant had warned me. No one had spoken his name. But I knew his scent the way a wound knows rain. Lucian, half a step ahead of me, slowed without looking back. You recognized him. It was not a question. My throat felt scraped raw. Why is he inside your stronghold? Lucian turned then, and firelight slid over the angles of his face. Calm. Controlled. Too controlled. Because he demanded entry under parley. Because he claims he has come for you. The words landed like a blow. Not because I believed them. Because some traitorous part of me had imagined this moment too many times before I was strong enough to hate it. A week ago, I might have broken just hearing that he had crossed mountains for me. Now all I felt was something uglier. A ripping inside my ribs. Love that had rotted. Grief with teeth. I didn't ask him to come, I said. I know. Lucian's voice was even, but there was a low danger in it that steadied me more than comfort would have. He did not touch me. He did not order me. He simply stood there, broad and immovable, as if the mountain itself had decided I would not face this alone unless I chose to. That choice is yours, he said. If you want him sent away, I will send him away. The offer should have been a mercy. Instead, it exposed me. If I refused to see Kael Rowan, he would remain a ghost with my old heartbeat in his chest. If I faced him, I risked reopening a wound I had barely learned to carry. And beneath that fear was something more dangerous. Curiosity. Why now? Not why had he come. I knew Kael Rowan well enough to guess ambition had traveled with him. The real question was why he had waited until now, until the air around me had changed, until the dragons had begun looking at me with suspicion instead of dismissal, until something waking inside me had started making even my own skin feel strange. Because he had sensed it. My silence must have answered for me. Lucian's gaze held mine for one measured second, then he inclined his head. The Western audience chamber. The chamber was smaller than a throne room and crueler for it. No crowd to hide inside. No distance to soften a face I had once loved. Kael Rowan stood near the center, framed by 2 columns of dark volcanic glass. He looked exactly as memory had preserved him and nothing like it. Tall, hard-shouldered, silver-gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach turn. The wolf marks at his throat stood out stark against tense skin. For one terrible instant, my body remembered safety before my mind remembered shame. Then I remembered the night he rejected me before the Moonfang pack wolves. The silence after. The lowered eyes. The humiliation I had worn like a second skin. I stopped several feet away. Kael Rowan took 1 step toward me. Elara Whitmore. My name and his voice still knew where to hurt me. Lucian remained at my side, silent as a blade. The 2 of them did not look at each other, but the chamber had already become a line drawn in blood and fire. You shouldn't be here, I said. I had to come. Kael's jaw tightened. Fire always made truth harder to hide. Torches burned along the black stone walls of Lucian Vale's council chamber, their light catching on gold scales engraved into the floor. The heat pressed against my skin, but the cold in Kael Rowan's eyes reached me first. He stood at the far end of the chamber in travel-worn leathers, broad shoulders rigid, the scent of pine and storm clinging to him like an old memory I had tried to bury. Around us, the Ashen Crown Dragons watched in sharp silence. Behind Kael, the Moonfang pack wolves held themselves like people who had already been judged and had come anyway. I had to come, Kael said again. Lucian did not raise his voice. He never needed to. You crossed into my stronghold without leave. That is not duty. That is trespass. Kael's gaze flicked to him at last. Then punish me after I say what I came to say. The room tightened. I could feel it in my throat, in my pulse, in the dragon mark still warm beneath my collarbone, where Lucian's magic had changed me in ways I still did not understand. Kael looked at me. Not around me. Not through me. At me. The Moonfang pack has invoked bloodright. A murmur broke through the chamber. I frowned. Bloodright died when you cast me out. His face flinched, barely, but I saw it. Not entirely. Under wolf law, if a rejected bond threatens pack blood, the alpha must answer before witnesses. He swallowed once. And under dragon law, if a foreign claim touches the line of the crown, the king must answer too. One of the Ashen Crown elders stepped forward, silver-eyed and severe. That is correct. My breath caught. Claim? I asked. Lucian turned to me then, his expression unreadable, but his hand found the small of my back. Grounding. Steady. You are no longer standing at the edge of either realm, Elara Whitmore. Whether they deserve you or not, both now have cause to answer for what was done. It hit me all at once. This was no argument. No private apology. No jealous confrontation brought across mountains. This was law. Kael straightened. I request the trial of blood and flame. The chamber erupted. Dragon voices rose first, offended and incredulous. Wolf voices followed, harsher, defensive, proud. The sound rolled through the room like colliding thunder. I stood in the middle of it, suddenly aware that the fight was no longer about who had hurt me. It was about what I was becoming. Lucian stepped down from the dais. One motion, and the chamber quieted. You understand what you ask, he said. Kael nodded. Loyalty, ancestry, compatibility, before both courts. And the price? Lucian asked. Kael did not hesitate. If I fail, Moonfang Pack relinquishes all blood claim over Elara Whitmore forever. The wolves behind him went still. That cost landed like a blade. Not my dignity this time. Not my place at a table. A whole pack's legal tie to me. A clean severing no one could undo. Lucian's gaze sharpened. And if I fail, the Ashen Crown must admit before both realms that the king's claim cannot stand. A dragon near the throne hissed under his breath. The court had gone from insult to risk in a heartbeat. Power, legacy, law, everything now had a weight I could feel in my bones. No, I said. Every head turned. I stepped forward before either of them could speak for me. You do not place me in the center of a ritual and call that respect unless I choose it. Silence again, deeper this time. Kael's jaw flexed. Lucian's eyes darkened, not in anger, but in attention. I had both of them now, and for once I did not feel small. The elder dragon inclined her head. Under dragon law, the one contested may refuse. And under wolf law? I asked. An older wolf from Moonfang answered, voice rough with age. The rejected may refuse. But if she consents, her blood decides what words cannot. The old wolf's words should have settled something. Instead, they cracked the room open. My blood decides. The sentence seemed to drift through the volcanic hall and lodge itself under every rib in my body. Heat from the braziers licked the black stone columns. Dragon fire gleamed over armor and gold, over the still faces of the Ashen Crown dragons, over the hard watchfulness of the Moonfang Pack wolves who had once looked through me as if I were smoke. For one suspended breath, no one moved. Then someone screamed. Not from fear. From pain. The elder dragon who had spoken was the first to stagger. Dark blood spilled from the corner of her mouth and hit the stone in bright, shocking drops. At nearly the same moment, the older Moonfang wolf who had answered me folded to one knee, fingers clawing at his throat. Gasps broke across the chamber like glass shattering. I smelled poison before I understood it. Bitter, metallic, wrong. Lucian Vale moved first, not toward me this time, but toward the elders. Kael Rowan lunged from the opposite side. Their timing was so perfect it made my skin tighten. Two rulers. Two instincts. One disaster. Seal the doors, Lucian snapped. No one leaves. Kael barked at the same time. The chamber erupted. Dragons drew steel with the hiss of scales and metal. Wolves shifted halfway in panic, claws scraping stone, fangs flashing in torchlight. For one terrible second, it looked as if old hatred had only been waiting for an excuse. I saw suspicion flare instantly, wolves glaring at dragon servants, dragons looking toward the Moonfang wolves, as if one of them must have done it. That was the point, I realized. Not murder. Division. I didn't think. I dropped beside the elder dragon first because she was closer. Her pulse fluttered wildly under my fingers. The blood at her lips was too dark. The smell coming off her wasn't a common venom. It carried ash, wolfsbane, and something colder underneath, something human-forged. I need water, I said. A young dragon froze. Now. The sharpness in my own voice startled even me, but it worked. A basin was shoved into my hands. I tore a strip from the inside of my sleeve, dipped it, wiped the blood from the elder's mouth, and saw faint silver crystals clinging to her skin. My stomach dropped. Iron Talon. Lucian's head snapped toward me. How do you know? Because this wasn't made to kill one court. I held up my stained fingers. It was made to make both blame each other. Kael had the older wolf braced upright, fighting to keep him conscious. Talk clearly, Elara Whitmore. So I did. Wolfsbane weakens wolves. Volcanic ash resin disrupts dragon healing. Refined silver binds to blood. Human hunters would need access to both courts to make something like this. My mouth went dry as the rest fell into place. And they would need one more thing. Lucian understood first. I saw it happen in his face. The hard stillness, the fury turning intelligent. You. Not me alone. What I carried. The blood decides. The elder dragon seized my wrist with surprising force. Her eyes, glazed with pain, locked onto mine. The barrier, she whispered. The older wolf made a broken sound from where Kael held him. Your mother knew. Everything inside me went cold. Before I could ask what that meant, a dragon guard crashed to the floor near the western archway with a knife in his throat. The blade had not come from outside. It had come from inside the chamber. One of the ashen-crowned dragons stood too still. One of the Moonfang wolves did the same. And then both of them ran. The betrayal was so naked, so stupid in its boldness, that it stole the air from the room. Lucian roared for them to be taken alive. Kael was already moving before the order finished. This was not a rescue. Not tonight. This was a hunt. I went after them too. Someone shouted my name, but I ignored it and ran through the smoke-lit corridor branching behind the hall. Smoke stung my throat as I tore down the branching corridor, one hand skimming the black stone wall to keep my balance. The stronghold shook around me. Somewhere above, dragon fire hit the outer terrace with a sound like the mountain itself had cracked open. Ahead, footsteps pounded hard and uneven. One belonged to a traitor from Lucian Vale's court, the other to one of my own from Moonfang. That hurt more than the smoke. Torchlight flashed over iron doors and narrow slits of window cut into the rock. I caught the scent first, human oil, steel, and ash. Iron Talon. The corridor opened into an old loading chamber carved into the mountain's side. Cold night air poured in through a half-raised gate, carrying sparks from the battle outside. I skidded to a stop behind a stack of supply crates and saw all of it in one terrible glance. The two traitors had not been running from the fight. They had been running to it. All 7 Iron Talon hunters were waiting beyond the gate with crossbows raised, silver hooks hanging from their belts, and chain nets spread across the ground like traps for animals. The ashen-crowned sentry by the winch lay crumpled in blood near the wall. My stomach turned. They had opened a path straight into Lucian's home. The Moonfang wolf lifted an arm and pointed back toward the heart of the stronghold. The Dragon King is inside. End it now. Before I could move, another shape slammed past me in a blur. Kael Rowan hit the wolf first. The impact cracked across the chamber. They rolled through soot and broken wood, teeth bared, hands striking wild and brutal. Kael did not look at me. He looked like a man trying to tear one last lie out of the world with his bare hands. Then the hunters saw me. Take the wolf woman alive, one of them shouted. The old fear should have frozen me. It did not. I snatched a fallen spear from beside the dead sentry and kicked one of the chain nets into the path of the first hunter who rushed me. He stumbled. I drove the spear's haft into his ribs hard enough to send him crashing into the gate frame. Pain shot through my shoulder. Good. It meant I was still moving. Steel sang behind me. Lucian. I did not see where he came from. One breath he was absent. The next he was in the chamber like judgment given form. Dark coat flaring, eyes burning molten gold. Dragon fire did not burst from him at once. That would have killed me too. Instead, he fought with impossible control, a curved blade in one hand and flame held under his skin like a storm waiting for permission. Back to me, he ordered. I hated how much my body trusted that voice. I moved anyway, fighting toward him as two hunters closed from the left. Lucian cut one down at the knee, pivoted, and caught the second by the throat. Heat flashed. The man screamed once. Kael wrenched free from the Moonfang traitor and staggered upright, blood running from his mouth. Elara, get behind cover. For one sharp second, both of them were looking at me through chaos and smoke, each trying to keep me alive. But only one of them had stood beside me before the whole court and refused to let me be diminished. The traitor from Ashen Crown lunged for the winch, trying to raise the gate all the way. If he succeeded, more enemies could flood the stronghold. I ran for him. He swung a dagger at my face. I caught his wrist with both hands, slammed it against the iron wheel, and heard bone crack. He howled. I drove my knee into his stomach and shoved him backward. Then a silver bolt punched through the air. Lucian moved before I understood what was happening. He turned, caught me against him, and took the bolt high in his shoulder. The sound that tore out of me did not feel human. Everything stopped. Not the battle, not the mountain. Me. The world narrowed to Lucian Vale's blood on my hands. For one terrible heartbeat, I could not hear the clash of steel or the roar of the volcano beneath us. I only felt the weight of him as he held me upright, even after the silver bolt buried itself in his shoulder. His breath hitched once against my hair. Hot. Controlled. Stubborn. No. I whispered, and then louder, breaking apart. No. Lucian drew back, just enough to look at me. Gold fire burned in his eyes, dimmed only by pain. Elara Whitmore, he said, like my name itself could steady the mountain. Look at me. I did. End this. Not save me. Not run. End this. Behind him, the coup was collapsing into madness. The 7 Iron Talon hunters had come for slaughter, and Kael Rowan's ambition had given them a path inside. Around us, the remaining Moonfang pack wolves fought in confusion against the Ashen Crown dragons, both sides bleeding for lives that should have died long before tonight. The volcanic stronghold shook under our feet. Smoke curled through the shattered hall. If I hesitated now, everyone still standing would die with the old hatred. So I moved. I tore the ceremonial blade from the fallen chain beside the iron wheel and climbed the broken dais before fear could catch me. My lungs burned. My wolf howled under my skin. I tasted ash and blood and silver in the air. Stop! I screamed. This time they did. Maybe it was the sound. Maybe it was the fire gathering at my back where Lucian still stood despite the bolt in his flesh. Maybe it was because I had already crossed the point where shame could control me. Every face turned toward me. Wolves, dragons, hunters. Kael Rowan among them, breathing hard, eyes bright with the kind of desperation that mistakes itself for power. He stared at the blade in my hand. Elara, don't be a fool. For once, the words did not cut. I was never your fool, I said. Then I drove the ceremonial blade into the black stone at the center of the dais. The metal sank with a cry that seemed to come from the mountain itself. Light split through the cracks. Not red. Not gold. Silver white. A pulse surged up through my arms and into my chest, ancient and enormous, like a locked door opening inside my blood. I saw it all in one blinding rush. My mother hiding the truth to keep me alive, the old pact between Moonfang and Ashen Crown, the line of guardians born to carry both mercy and fire. Not wolf. Not dragon. The bridge between them. That was the legacy they tried to bury. That was why I had never fit the place that rejected me. That was why Lucian had looked at me not like a mistake, but like something known. The hall fell silent. I turned to the wolves first. I was raised in Moonfang, I said, my voice carrying without effort now. I learned what it means to be left out, spoken over, traded for pride. But I also learned loyalty. That loyalty was twisted by fear tonight. Then I faced the dragons. And here, I learned that power without mercy becomes another kind of cage. Kael took one step forward. You think blood makes you fit to rule anything? No, I said. Choice does. I lifted my hand toward the hunters. The mountain answered. Stones split beneath their boots, opening a ring of fire that pinned in the surviving Iron Talon hunters without touching anyone else. Their weapons clattered from numb hands. They were trapped, not burned. Judgment, not vengeance. Then I looked at Kael Rowan. The old ache was there. It would probably always be there somewhere. The wound of being dismissed before I was ever truly seen. But it no longer owned me. You rejected me when it cost you nothing, I said. You let others believe I was less, because it made you feel more. And when that wasn't enough, you chose fear over honor. His face changed then, not to regret, to recognition.